Welcome to the Bible Forum. It's Sunday night, March 8th, 2020. I'm Warren Sprouse. This is the Bible Forum. We're here every Sunday night at this time. We're here to tell you what's going on in the world, help you get yourself oriented properly. Got a lot of things as we normally have for this evening. Going to spend the next couple of hours together. If you'd like to join us in the chat room, we've got some folks over there. Go to the BibleForum.net, to the website. You'll see the link. You can click that there. We've had this whole coronavirus thing swirling around for the last couple of weeks. Destiny church leader, a fellow by the name of Brian Tamaki, was speaking this week in Auckland, New Zealand. He said that Bible-believing Christians who tithe have a Psalm 91 protection policy, he called it, against coronavirus. Now, inquiring minds want to know, so I quickly ran to my Bible. I opened it up to Psalm 91. Psalm 91 says, "You will not fear the terror of night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in the darkness, nor the plague that destroys at midday." We needn't fear it, he said. There is a lot of hysteria that has been engendered by certain elements surrounding this pandemic, he said. He also went on to say that satanic spirits control how viruses travel in the air. But Christians are safe from all of that and from the virus itself. The prince of the power of the air, Satan, has control of the atmosphere unless you're a blood-bought, born-again, Jesus-loving, Bible-believing, Holy Ghost-filled, tithe-paying believer. Did you check off all those boxes? You are the only one that can walk through atmospheres and has literally a protection, Psalm 91 protection policy around you. He went on to say, I don't care if you don't believe it, it's all right. Now, statements like this are troublesome. Troublesome because they mix the speaker's philosophy, imagination, with the Bible's statements. And today, often those statements are more encouragement than truth. We're going to talk about this a little bit later in the show, all about the coronavirus thing, but I want to keep you in tune here. Oh, and a hotel in China's Fujian province used to hold quarantined coronavirus victims, collapsed a couple days ago, there Saturday. About 80 people were in that hotel when it collapsed. 40 were rescued. About 30 others they know of are trapped as of Saturday evening. And no one knows how or why this happened. Churched adults say their time at church makes them feel inspired. 37% of them anyway. Another 37% say that church is an encouragement to them. 34% say they feel forgiven, as though they have connected with God or experienced His presence. 33% talk about being challenged to change something in their life every time they go. Nonetheless, 32% of them also said that they felt disappointed by the experience about half the time. And 40% said they leave church feeling guilty. Kinnaman said, "We must emphasize the reality that week in and week out, today's church leaders are tasked with meeting a diverse set of emotional expectations." Now, I don't know who Kinnaman is, but having pastored for close to 40 years myself, I find the statement ludicrous. Week in and week out, church leaders have the task of meeting a diverse set of emotional expectations. That's not what I did. That's not what pastors do. They might do that in a counseling situation. They might do that in an otherwise personal situation, but church is not like that. It just tells us a little bit more about how church has morphed, and the whole idea of pastoring and ministering to people has become something totally different. I mean, touchy-feely, perhaps. I don't watch a lot of television. I watch the news of an evening, local news. I like to pick up bits and pieces of Fox News online, see what people are saying. But there are other TV channels out there, channels that are online news channels, MSNBC being one of them. But there are several others. One of them hosts a fellow by the name of Chris Matthews. He's 74 years old currently. He's been on this particular station probably since it began, which is to say 20 years or more. But apparently he stayed at the punch bowl of live TV a little bit too long. He has recently quit. Chris Matthews tendered his resignation when attention was drawn to a string of leering comments about women that he has made over the years, including about colleagues and about public officials and even about guests. His parting comments on his program included the changing of the times that made these comments worse than they were. He says it's an amazing thing how gutter talk has been outlawed on cable and in public conversation, while continuing to grow ever more crass and sacrilegious. Younger and younger children are using this vernacular, while parents seem to either look the other way or perhaps use it themselves in the children's presence. The logic here, if you can call it that, seems to be that words are words, not guns, not bombs, and certainly not dangerous. So, Chris Matthews is the latest victim of this schizophrenic philosophy. What did he do? Well, he did not repent, and he did not bow to the monitors of our social structure by agreeing with them. He simply continued to be, well, Chris. But now he's gone. Political correctness has taken over. U.S. President Donald Trump on Monday withdrew the nomination of Elaine McCusker to a senior Pentagon post. Withdrawal of McCusker's nomination to be Undersecretary of Defense, a comptroller, made in November was announced this week by the White House in a statement. Why? Well, because reports apparently surfaced that she had questioned the suspension of military aid to Ukraine, a key element in the inquiry leading to Trump's impeachment. The decision following the ouster of several other officials who testified in the impeachment inquiry was criticized by Senator Jack Reed, the top Democrat on the Senate Armed Services Committee. He's quoted as saying the termination of her nomination is collateral damage by a president who has vindictively purged career national security professionals caught up in the impeachment inquiry. Well, he's wrong. This president has purged any and almost all who disagree with his policies, foreign or domestic. And guess what? That appears to be a presidential prerogative. The option is to have people making decisions in his name that don't reflect his policies nor his opinions. How bad is that? Well, it's not polite. It's not diplomatic. And quite honestly, it's not done. Not more than once. But wait a minute. It's always been done. Perhaps not as openly nor as often, but as long as I've been on the planet, it's always been this way. Democrats can't find anything that'll stand up against reality. I ran across an article this week about a drag queen in training. A school in Brooklyn, New York, reportedly handed out stickers to 4-year-old children during a drag queen story time event that said, drag queen in training. They could put them on themselves. Now, according to Twitter, a user identified as at Beyond Reason's Doubt said the stickers were handed out by the unnamed private school during a family day that included the appearance of drag queens. A video clip out of the UK showed a drag queen teaching toddlers how to twerk, a sexual dance where the participants repeatedly gyrate their butt in the air. Many drag queens have engaged in sexually explicit behavior, including one queen who visited a primary school in Scotland after posting pictures of himself on Twitter acting out sexually immoral behaviors. Did you get that? The pictures were on Twitter before he visited the primary school. Apparently he got invited. A separate video that caused controversy last week also showed a drag queen dancing suggestively in front of a little girl, while adults in the room cheered and applauded. Last year, during a speech in front of the Lafayette Library Board of Control in Louisiana, drag queen Dylan Pontiff candidly admitted the true purpose of drag queen story time. It said, "This is going to be the grooming of the next generation." Did anybody doubt that was the goal? The teachers, the schools, the libraries, the people who invited these people in, did they not know that was the agenda? An admitted pedophile and convicted child porn peddler, he also wrote an article in which he describes Desmond is amazing, talking about the 12-year-old drag queen kid. Called this kid hot. Reacting to concerns over Desmond's performance at a gay nightclub in New York where attendees threw money at this child, his mother defended the decision, telling an Australian TV show, "I don't understand what the controversy is." Desmond was previously involved in drag queen story time, in which drag queens visited schools and libraries across America to read to the children. One of the participants at a drag queen story time event in Houston, 32-year-old Albert Garza, later turned out to be a registered sex offender who was convicted of assaulting an 8-year-old boy in 2008. In other news, a bipartisan coalition of House Republicans and some Democrats came together Thursday to pass an amendment to the Rights for Transportation Security Officers Act, which would make it harder for the Transportation Security Agency to hire people who have been convicted of sexual assault, terrorism, and other violent crimes. This, according to the Daily Caller. 174 Democrats, including House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer, then voted against the measure. One authored by a colleague, Representative Lauren Underwood, a Democrat from Illinois. Leading the majority of House Democrats to oppose the amendment was the Socialist Squad, including Representatives Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez from New York, Ilhan Omar from Minnesota, Ayanna Pressley from Massachusetts, and Rashida Tlaib, I don't know how you do a TL together, from Michigan. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi did not cast a vote. What was their problem with all of this? Well, according to Representative House Leader Kevin McCarthy, the socialist wing of the party did not want to have that amendment go forward on this bill. It was that simple. Authorities arrested an 18-year-old student at Rhinelander High School in Rhinelander, Wisconsin recently, and were shocked after the student allegedly sexually assaulted one of his fellow students. What's the details here? Well, according to local TV station, authorities arrested the 18-year-old student, identified him as Austin Sauer, just past Thursday, charging him of child enticement, fourth-degree sexual assault, and exposing genitals to a child. The Wisconsin legislature defines fourth-degree sexual assault as sexual contact with a person without the consent of that person. A spokesperson for the Oneida County Sheriff's Office said the incident took place in the school's gender-neutral bathroom. Did anybody in the school system not realize things happen in gender-neutral bathrooms? It's been a long time, guys. The school has now closed the bathroom to its student population. Where will these people go to the bathroom now? Captain Terry Hook said the school did not notify parents of the incident because it was reportedly an isolated occurrence. It only happened once, so there's no need to tell parents that their underage children in care of the school are out there and susceptible to this kind of thing. Didn't seem to make sense to them. In a statement, Rhinelander School District Superintendent Kelly Jacoby said that, quote, this was not a random incident since both students went to the bathroom voluntarily, end of quote, and that bathroom is no longer available to students. The male student will no longer be able to be on school grounds. Well, that solves the problem, doesn't it? The U.S. Supreme Court is about to consider an abortion law. It's the first time in quite a while. And I've been hearing and reading about the Supreme Court taking up this issue of abortion all week. I thought they were going to revisit Roe v. Wade the way they were talking. But no. It's about doctors having admitting rights to hospitals within 30 miles of their clinic. And how do Democrats react? Well, the minority leader in the U.S. Senate took to the steps of the Supreme Court shouting, I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind and you will pay the price. You won't know what hit you if you go forward with these awful decisions. What awful decisions? Well, the Supreme Court on Wednesday took up June Medical Services versus Russo case, which considers the constitutionality of a 2014 Louisiana law requiring doctors who perform abortions to obtain admitting privileges at a hospital within 30 miles of their clinic, a credential most abortionists do not have. And why are they required to do this? To protect women's lives. The Unsafe Abortion Protection Act was introduced by Democrat State Senator Katrina Jackson, who says she considers her bill, quote, a health standard law, end of quote. A law that is what she says very common sense. And that basically Louisiana, unknowingly to us, had a lower standard of care for women who elected to have abortions in some places. And so what we did was make sure that the standard of health care that we established in Louisiana for years also applied to abortion. The problem? According to critics of the law, it threatens to shut down all but one abortion clinic in Louisiana. And that clinic sees roughly 10,000 abortions every year. A Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled in favor of the law in September. The Supreme Court will consider whether to allow the lower court's ruling to stand or whether the law conflicts with the whole woman's health versus Hellerstadt issue. The 2016 Supreme Court precedent ruling that Texas cannot restrict abortion in a way that creates an undue burden for women seeking abortions. What do you think is going to happen? Well, we have to wait until sometime in June, and then we'll learn, and I'll tell you about it. This past week, on Wednesday, Congress reached a bipartisan $8 billion bill to provide emergency funding to combat the coronavirus outbreak. Now, that's very simplistic, but the bigger picture here is that our president only asked for $2.5 billion. The House overwhelmingly passed the package, 415 to 2. The Senate could take it up as early as Thursday of this week, and it'll then go to President Trump's desk for his signature. Representatives Ken Buck, a Republican from Colorado, and Andy Biggs, a Republican from Arizona, were the only two members of Congress to vote against the package. We're talking about $3 billion for developing treatments, including $300 million for the government to purchase drugs from manufacturers at fair and reasonable prices. Another $2.2 billion for public health measures to help prevent its spread, with more than $1 billion to be sent overseas. Senate Appropriations Chair Richard Shelby from Alabama, talking to NBC News, said this should not be about politics. This should be about doing our job to protect the American people from a potential pandemic. The agreed upon package is larger than the $2.5 billion the Trump administration had originally asked for to combat the virus, and slightly less than the $8.5 billion counter-offered by the Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. My personal opinion is that we're spending a lot of money for something that's probably not going to be as big as they think it's going to be. We'll talk a little bit more about this later on in the show. Over in Greece, the European Union, including the United Kingdom, have been funneling billions of euros to the Islamist government in Ankara in an effort to persuade it to bring the migrant crisis under a modicum of control. Well, all that unraveled the end of February of this year, 2020, as Turkish President Erdogan announced migrants were free to pass through his country and on into Europe, ostensibly through Greece. Observers believe this is punishment for the West's failure to offer sufficient support to his invasion of Syria, a border which has become fraught with danger as his forces clash with the Russian-backed Syrian government in Idlib province. I can't pronounce all these words. There's video footage purporting to show Turkish police firing tear gas over the border at Greek police in response to the Greeks firing tear gas at them. At least that's how the Turks see it. While heavily armed soldiers from both countries stare at each other through border fencing as they patrol the frontier just yards apart. Keep your eyes on this one. Greece appears to feature prominently in the biblical end times scenario. I don't know how all this works, but it sounds like gas prices are about to drop. They've been dropping in our area. I was in New Jersey recently. They're a little more expensive up there, but there's a variety of prices. According to Bloomberg News, on Friday of this past week, Saudi Arabia and Russia were unable to reach an agreement during an OPEC Plus summit in Vienna. Following all this, Saudi Arabia started making noises that they will begin to raise production starting next month by 10 million barrels a day. At the same time, they plan to slash prices by almost half. Aramco, Saudi Arabia's state-run producer, has already slashed prices to Europe by $4 to $6 a barrel. It was $18. It's now down to anywhere from $12 to $14. At the same time, cutting prices to the United States by $7. Now, that's about a 40% decline in cost. That ought to show up at the pumps one of these days. At the same time, Saudi Arabia has privately told some market participants it could raise production by 12 million barrels a day. That sounded to me like 12 million barrels a day more. They said if necessary, making the deepest cuts in at least 20 years on its main grades, all in an effort to push as many barrels into the market as possible. Now, analysts claim that this is equivalent to a declaration of war. It might explain why earlier, Sunday our time, Saudi's crown prince began another crackdown on dozens of royals and army officers following the arrest of powerful princes who may compete for the throne once the public mood in Saudi Arabia turns nasty in the coming weeks and months, meaning there'll be less money available. But it should lower our prices. Isn't that a good thing? That's what's been going on while you were busy making a living and going about your business. We'll be back after this break to talk about the coronavirus and Psalm 91 protection. Stay tuned.